Hello, everybody. We're waiting on some more people to join, but in the meantime, we just wanted to welcome everybody to our next session of AI Marketers Guild Asia Pacific. And today we're very excited to introduce our incredible next speaker, Caroline McCarten. But before I do that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Nicola Quayle, one of the co-founders of AI Marketers Guild APAC, along with colleagues Dakshin Anadi from India. For those new to the community, a quick background of who we are. So AI Marketers Guild was the brainchild of a US marketer, David Berkowitz. And after launching 2 years ago, in fact, probably 3 years ago now, it's grown to be a significant community in North America. So we reached out to David to partner with AIMG and create a regional community that showcases local pioneers and sort of AI tools, applications, marketing best practice, integrating AI, and of course, world-class AI thought leaders. We host these monthly webinar series, and we're really excited about, the different topics, products, and thought leadership that is emerging in the Southern Hemisphere. So today's guest has spent over 15 years building at the intersection of entertainment, production, and technology. And in fact, I've known Caroline personally for a very long time and watched her professional career. And now as a founder, from Hollywood premieres to live broadcasts for Queen, Pink Floyd, and FIFA across 3 continents, to roles at Warner Brothers and Hoyt Cinema, and now leading the sort of future of video production infrastructure at enterprise scale as founder and CEO of yourfilm. So her and her team are building a sort of a platform where connecting global production, structured asset management, and AI-supported workflows so brands can produce high-quality video anywhere without rebuilding teams or processes. But as we know, AI-generated video, well, it's hard to miss at the moment. And like LinkedIn being taken over with what we call AI slop, we know that video is not far behind. So today, Caroline's going to walk us through what actually separates AI-generated video from human-led content and whether that difference still matters to your audience. So, Caroline, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Nick. It's nice to be here. So thanks for the opportunity to be part of the Marketers Guild. So as Nick said, my background is certainly film industry, and with yourfilm, it's a platform that runs professional video production for brands, basically globally. So taking a lot of the learnings from that industry and bringing it into the corporate and the brand video marketing world and supercharging it with AI. AI is a huge part of video. So for me, to sort of set the scene, video has always been really about two key things: human emotion and technology. And the technology has changed over the years. You think black and white, color, HD, 3D, interactive, and never more so in recent years with AI. But what hasn't changed is the human emotion, connection, and the creativity. And I think what we're seeing now is play out in absolute real time with AI video is the importance of having both of these elements, not just, one or the other. So to have a look at the big picture, I think we'll just start with the evolution of AI video because it's been rapid, and it was only a few years ago, 2022, 23, when sort of the first era started, what I kind of call the toy era. The tech exists, it's producing short 3 to 5 second clips with heavy artifacts. I mean, whoever thought that Will Smith eating spaghetti would become the poster child for video content? It's a bit random. But the audience is tech enthusiasts, Discord communities. Runway and Pika Labs launch commercially, but they're very much positioned to consumers. And the conversation around it is novelty. Look what AI can do. How cool is this? But people in production aren't really taking it seriously yet. And then, just 2 years ago, OpenAI previews Sora. And this is actually a real inflection point. Minute-long clips, cinematic quality, world simulation framing. And the industry kind of sits up and starts to pay attention. And the narrative shifts and starts to become about the arms race. Who is going to win the AI arms race? And, then Sora launches publicly. Lionsgate, we take a lot of cues from the film industry because it's similar, same audiences, same content. They sign with Runway and start training a custom model on their 20,000 strong library of titles. But the conversation is still very much at the output layer. What does AI video look like? What can AI generate? And then ByteDance joins the party with Seed Dance middle of last year and goes viral for realism. And then you suddenly start seeing copyright concerns coming up, particularly out of Hollywood. And I think now we are moving this year into the next era, which is defined by infrastructure. So, we'll all remember earlier this year in March, OpenAI shut down Sora. So that consumer AI product that was the flashiest in the category didn't work commercially. And that same month, Netflix acquired Interpositive, which is Ben Affleck's production company, for $587 million. Now, Interpositive isn't making AI films. They're making AI tools that help humans make better films. So, automated color grading, relighting, continuity, things like that. 16 people, $587 million, which is a pretty clear signal coming out of that industry. Seed Dance, it launches 2.5, longer clips, 4K native, which is production quality, professional quality. But they launch as enterprise beta only. So they're not chasing consumers anymore. It's shifting to professionals and enterprise. And again, from the film industry, Lionsgate names its first chief AI officer and deploys AI across 80% of its workforce. But it's all in the workflow tools. It's not in content generation. And I think now we're seeing the next wave of AI video across the industry starting to kick in. And it's about infrastructure as opposed to creative output or generation. So, as they say, there is no original thought in AI. It has been trained on everything that's ever made, and it gives you the most likely version of what you asked for. And that's not creativity, that's statistics, it's maths. And that doesn't build a brand, or that alone doesn't build a brand. AI video is the fastest growing category in marketing tech, yet it is producing some of the most average content the industry has ever seen. So we just have a quick look at some of the data on the uptake. It's phenomenal. Growth in AI video generation is off the charts. The bulk of Fortune 500s are using AI video tools. The market is 10xing over the next sort of 8 to 10 years. And the majority of marketing teams are using AI video in at least one campaign per quarter. But so there's a huge amount of appetite for it. Everyone's trying things, but so much of it feels like it's actually made by no one. It's a bit soulless. And I think this is one of the inherent problems. AI is trained on the aggregate of all creative work that ever exists. It learns what's the most common, what's most expected, statistically likely. So if you ask it to make something, it'll come up with the median version of that thing. And if you think about it, creativity is kind of the polar opposite of this. It's about, the specific detail, the unexpected, the thing you don't see coming, or that detail that's instantly relatable that kicks you in the gut kind of thing. And I don't think AI structurally, it can produce that yet. And that's not because it's not sophisticated, but because its training pulls everything to average. And it does have a little bit of a taste problem. It doesn't know when to stop and will generate endlessly and endlessly. And I think, we've all tied ourselves up in knots with Claude or Chat going in circles till you kind of lose sight of what you're doing and confuse yourself. And video is absolutely no different. And a big part of that creative expert's job is in the edit. It's knowing what to cut when it's done, which is actually quite difficult. What makes it true? What makes it feel right or feel like us? And that I think is going to be very difficult to automate because it's emotional intelligence. And that's the difference between a piece of content that connects or just kind of gets scrolled past. And I think there's a real brand implication for this. Generic AI produces generic content. Your brand starts to look like everything else. And us humans, we are pretty good at identifying AI generated video, particularly our younger Gen Z friends. They clock it straight away. And this is why I think a lot of consumers, I think it's over about a third of consumers, say that not only do they identify AI gen video, but that it lowers their perception of the brand associated with it. And I don't think that's because AI is bad in itself. It's because average is bad. And that always has been the case, no matter what produced it. Average is boring. It doesn't capture our attention or make us feel anything. And so we dismiss it, and we run the risk of dismissing the brand with it as well. Again, just anchoring back into the film industry, research on AI generated film characters finds audiences connect when there is consistent, recognizably human behavior. We'll connect with characters that clearly aren't human. You take animatronics way back when with E.T., Toy Story here. We all laughed and cried. They're clearly not humans. We're connecting with a dinosaur. And we love these characters still to this day, and we share them with our kids decades later. So that uncanny valley that people talk about, it's not just a visual thing, it is deeply emotional. And I think audiences feel the absence of a person. They feel the absence of the heart and soul behind the character or content. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges with pure AI generated video. Now, that's absolutely not to say AI doesn't have a place in video or the creative process. It does. It's the thesis of my business. It completely does. But if we have a look at where it's winning, like right now, is things like short form tutorials and scalable explainers. Content I call functional content is not meant to be telling a story or particularly emotion. It is functional, communicating something. For this type of content, specifically, AI avatars actually get a higher watch time on TikTok and a completion rate, so watching all the way through the end, of nearly 80%, which is really, really high. So it's working really well in that specific use case. But I think, the human still wins on emotional storytelling. There's 3 times more impact there. Absolutely anything in trust-sensitive industries and in brand story content. AI barely achieves half the comparable engagement here. But the interesting thing, or the thing I find most interesting, and the real finding in all of this that I think is driving that next era of AI video is the hybrid. AI production with human creative direction achieves 4 times the return on ad spend versus 3.8 for human only and 3 for pure AI. So the combination of human and AI beats out both individually. To put it in terms of a scale, if you sort of think volume versus brand, the further you move towards volume, the more AI can really carry the load for you. But the further you move towards brand, the more you need an element of human creative direction in there somewhere. Like AI, what it can do really, really well is the learning and development content, personalized outreach at scale. It's great at quality control, technical consistency, all of that sort of stuff. But it can't do nuanced human performances or tell real brand stories yet, or content that requires human emotion. It does also have a bit of a cheap association problem. Like Gen AI is increasingly seen as the low budget, low production value by customers. If we break this down into the workflow, you can actually really see where AI earns its place and does a lot of heavy lifting. And at the moment, it's in pre-production, the red dots, orange dots, pre-production, asset management, and post. So, once you've got your creative piece, the idea, the human at sort of the top of the food chain, you can stress test briefs, you can create lots of different versions, support with scripting in first drafts and variations, and all of the pre-production admin, logistics, scheduling, shot lists, all of that. Post-production in making selects and doing captions and format resizing. This saves a whole lot of time, so it's an important part of the process. And then, distribution is a big one. Different audiences, different versions for different platforms, regions, whatever it is. Where you still need, I think, the creative expert in this loop is the concept and creative direction. It's not to say they have to be heavily involved, but an element certainly of that to ground it. Talent, the production, filming, you do still need a human there for some of that. And story decision. What is this video actually about? Brand judgment, does it feel like us? And then, knowing when it's done. But I think the important distinction here is between AI in the video production workflow, so scripting, editing, asset management, versus AI video as the output. These are fundamentally two very different things, and I think the industry conflates them a lot and has done for quite some time. At the moment, what we see is many brands, or most brands actually, are deploying AI still at that output layer, replacing human content with AI content, rather than at the infrastructure layer, where it really makes human-led production faster, more cost-effective, and much more scalable. What's backfiring is replacing on-camera spokespeople with avatars in trust-sensitive categories, financial services, healthcare, anything that requires credibility. If you take the human out and put a fake one in, the credibility is just shot from the beginning. And AI-generated video with no creative human element to it, that is what everyone calls AI slop. It just is endless. And it doesn't really achieve any business goal or any brand goal. And we are starting to see some legal exposure risks start to come through. I don't think brands are massively looking at this yet, but it certainly will start to become more prevalent. Disclosure laws in New York and California, the EU AI Act. So if you're using synthetic performers in ads without disclosure, you're potentially exposed in these regions. And I think this is going to become much more widespread globally and in Australia as legislation catches up and is implemented. And again, that risk of cheap association is very much rearing its head. We perceive it as low value, low production value, and that association can transfer to the brand, which is a real risk. But I think the real opportunity for brands isn't in replacing human content, but in multiplying it. So one great piece of creative becomes 40 variants localized for 12 markets, along with a library of sales enablement cuts. And it's all generated from an authentic original. Like the human creative becomes the asset, and the AI is the production and distribution engine, basically. So AI is not replacing your spokesperson. It makes your spokesperson appear in 50 more places than your production budget perhaps would have allowed otherwise. And if we have a quick look to the future, just a few kind of things that we perhaps see coming. It's always risky predicting the future with AI, but hyper-personalization at scale, I think, is going to be something quite interesting. You have one master video produced really well, real humans in it, creative direction, and that becomes your source of truth. And then AI generates hyper-personalized variations of the content itself. I'm not talking about, localizing for languages, but changing the actual content. So if you think about what's relatable or aspirational for me, that's very different to my neighbor's 25-year-old son. So, you take cars in a story, for example, just as something generic, in a piece of content. What connects with me might be, a 7-seater EV with a roof rack, because I got kids, dogs, 4 soccer balls, 2 surfballs, 3 changes of clothes in the boot. But what connects and catches the attention of my 25-year-old neighbor who is into racing is a sports car. Or the tradie who lives on the other side of me, she loves her high-end ute and is going to connect with that. And being able to customize the actual video content itself with different, changing a bit of the environment, the food, the hair color, the car, in that kind of endlessly is very powerful, and without having to film anything additional. So we know that personalized content already gets about 4 times higher engagement than that generic one size fits all. And I think AI, the future of AI, allows us to supercharge this really almost down to an individual level. And the brands that kind of win with this are the ones that can produce a great piece of human-led content and then let AI multiply it, rather than the ones producing 100 mediocre pieces of AI-generated video kind of thing. Another thing that we're seeing, and I think this is probably across the board wider than just video, is private brand AI. So purpose-built, domain-specific, in our case, video production, AI trained on your own footage, your own people, your brand voice, your real life stories, that creates something that no competitor can replicate. So public AI models produce the average of everything. Your private AI produces you or your brand. And this is a compounding advantage as well. Every shoot, every piece of footage, every creative decision ever made becomes the asset, and your model just gets smarter and stronger over time. So really your uniqueness, your brand, your culture becomes the asset that everything is then built off and trained off. And, that takes us to sort of the third one. It's kind of similar. That's a compounding, it's a compounding model. And, traditional video production starts from the beginning each time. You come up with an idea, you brief a production company, you make a video, you publish it, you archive it, lather, rinse, repeat. With this, with that process, the old process, you kind of lose everything and have to start again with every project. And it's expensive, it's inconsistent across even teams, let alone, office locations. So I think the brands that can really build a content intelligence layer of footage, of data, of brand guidelines, all feeding a private AI produced video that gets, better, cheaper, more scalable over time, as opposed to kind of more expensive or more generic. Dora, I'm not going to do a sales pitch, but I just wanted to show you this in practice of what I mean by infrastructure and what it looks like. This is, in terms of yourfilm, how we're building the infrastructure. So to set the scene, a client comes to us and their experience typically with their production agency is they spend 8 weeks, they produce one brand video, and it's a great piece of content. Yep, their CMO loves it, everybody loves it. It runs once in one market for one campaign, because to adapt it for different personas, channels, platforms, whatever it is, costs way more than the original production. And I think this is a problem that a lot of brands have. And if that's not a creativity problem, that's a scalability problem and an infrastructure one. So the old answer was shoot more. The AI answer was generate everything. Neither work. One's expensive, one erodes your brand. So how do you combine this? Where does it live? Where does your brand live? So all of your brand asset and kind of companies' tacit knowledge, really, communications, footage, video deliverables, and that footage is a hugely valuable asset and data, because it is so genuinely your company, your brand, your people. And if you create synthetic media off that, you own that. There is nothing generic about that. And if you give AI access, your own private AI access to this source of truth instead of a blank canvas, you end up, you've got the same human, same creative, 40 different executions, one shoot budget, everything in one place, automated, and most importantly, it is absolutely authentically you, and it's your proprietary content as well. And I think that this is what we mean by AI at the infrastructure layer. The human is quite literally still in the frame, but AI makes sure they appear in a whole lot more frames in a lot more places for a lot less time and investment, basically. So I guess I'll leave you on a final note. AI in the hands of creative experts makes us more creative. AI in place of creative experts makes us all the same. So I don't think the question is whether to use AI. Absolutely, we use AI, but it's where do you put the human in that process to get the best of both worlds. So on that note, thank you. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yes, so many. But for anybody else, before I jump in, I usually get the ball rolling, but feel free to pop your questions in the chat or be brave enough and take yourself off mute and put your video on. Speaking of video, thank you so much, Caroline. My mind has been racing. I've taken lots of notes. It really made me think. I did a talk recently around cultural sovereignty and really similar themes, around that vanillification of culture. And I thought, gosh, imagine prompting ChatGPT, and this might show my age, but to have a gorilla playing a set of drums for
Yeah,
Cadbury chocolate with a Phil Collins soundtrack. Like it just, those completely out of the box
yeah,
outlier ideas that, to your point, can supercharge a brand. Or, for Volvo trucks, we're going to get Jean-Claude Van
yeah,
Damme to,
yeah.
and yeah, so exactly that
Mm.
um, there's no way that an AI could kind of come up with those crazy ideas. But it was interesting about what you said, knowing when it's done. So could you share like a couple of examples of where, like as you said, the AI just goes in the loop, but for a marketer or brand storyteller, yeah, what's
What
the
happens? I think
yeah.
there is a with and certainly AI video generation for certain stuff, small pieces, internal stuff, funny stuff, whatever. It's fine for that. But on a premium brand level, when you're really communicating your brand, um, there is a skill in creating a story, and there is a skill in um, translating that story into video, even and all of those pieces. And that comes from a lot of experience and multiple people. If I sat down and started to prompt AI, I'm not going to get a great video. If one of our creatives prompts, it's going to take him a really, really long time or her a really long time to do it, almost as much as editing to kind of get it right. And I think AI will just keep coming up with lots of different versions, and you lose sight of what the objective is. You can get what's the word? You're just flooded with a multitude of different ideas and angles, and unless you're starting, with a creative guiding light, that just everything just dissipates quite quickly, I think. And I think we see that in when you're trying to come up with using AI as a blank canvas. If you're using it on something that's trained really, really well, or you've got a, a good data set or I don't know, a good set of guidelines for it, and you can start questioning that. That's where it helps. But just going, make me a great video about chocolate. No way it's coming up with a gorilla. Like I can remember the comments on that one specifically. Someone saying, "I have no idea what this has got to do with chocolate, but I love it." Like, and we remember it decades later. Like AI is not going to do that. Mm.
And I was going to say, what, again, as a marketer, and for those watching who, might be thinking, oh, well, it's easy, it's cheaper, look at how much more I can do with AI. Yeah, what would be some of the warning bells or alarm
I
bells that you would sound?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is the erosion of your brand. The cheap associated. Yes, it's cheap. Yes, it may be easier, but the outcome looks cheap and easier. And is it going to deliver the brand or business outcome that you want from that piece of content? Just because you can create something doesn't mean you should, and it doesn't mean that it's going to get the objective, hit your business objective. There's quite a bit of work in that piece. So I would be wary of not damaging your brand, but cheapening it. Or we know it's AI video. We know not a lot of thought necessarily has gone into it. There are exceptions, absolutely. Some incredible pieces of AI generated content, but they take hundreds of hours and some real experts to do it. So it's actually not a cost saving. It's AI as a medium that they chose creatively to use. And I do think we're starting to need to be careful with your brand sovereignty and uh, some of the legalities of the content and where it's coming from and what you're using and what you're associating with your brand. You don't know. if it's I don't think it's a huge problem yet, but it'll start to become, is a piece of music too close to an original that are you opening yourself up to copyright infringements and things like that? It's a very, very grey area. But if you don't know where something's come from and AI's just created it, there are inherent risks there.
Dax, I don't know if you're able to come off mute, but yeah, Dax has a lot of experience in the kind of audio world, but just saying, for some models that actually it can start to get very expensive generating AI content, that it's almost a myth. Hey, Dax.
Hey.
Hey, sorry, it was one of those days I was driving again. So I thought I'd hi there.
Early morning in India.
Yeah, just a quick context. We've been working a lot in the AI video space, making videos for clients across real estate, travel, and many industries. So one of our experience has been that, with time, as the models have become smarter and it's becoming indistinguishable to differentiate between AI and reality, the models are also getting expensive. For example, we use a lot of CDANG 2.5, and it's fairly significant. So an average video, which is a 30-second, takes about $1,000, to produce the finished output. So I just thought I'd chip in on that one.
And equally, that's with, I think, again, AI in the hands of creative experts using it. It is expensive because you are trying to get the result that you want. It works, but it's not a cost saving. So in that case, you are putting out a good piece of content, and it is human led because there is a creative human in the loop somewhere. But the compromise is the cost is the same. So it becomes a creative choice or a scale choice or whatever it is, logistics choice, perhaps.
Correct. We were in fact working with one more client, and they were from the fintech industry. So they kept going on with iterations. And at one point of time, we had to raise the hand and say that, guys, this costs a lot of tokens. Don't think of it like making a movie where you can regenerate this all the time. So
it's not a Netflix series. Settle down.
Yeah.
I love that.
Definitely a risk.
Well, Nadia was saying, and Nadia, I don't know if you're able to come off mic as well, but if I had 20K US as a monthly budget for content, how much should I park for real content versus investing and developing the infrastructure?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I think there's a couple of things. If you developing the infrastructure yourself or working with companies that have that already is slightly different things as well. But I would say a 20 grand budget, a quarter of it in your actual asset production. It's difficult what you're actually investing in the infrastructure, but the rest of it to scale your content, basically, because you do want to invest and make sure you've got the asset right, because that carries on with lots of other pieces of content as a source of truth. It's not replicated, but it's certainly used. And you can use a lot of your budget to actually scale that, and the infrastructure kind of gets built along with that. Always make sure you've got all of your assets nicely organized, your video footage, because that is transcriptions, transcribe everything, because the AI tools, whatever they are, can really read that, and then it gets to know you. It's amazing what we have client LLMs, so client brains that learn. They're specific for a client, that know every piece of content and everything we've ever filmed. Even all the cameras are rolling, and you've got people in an organization having conversations, so you get the real authentic tone and the real them across lots of different locations, and it can really distill that down very, very well and create content, because that's ultimately what your customers' experience is with your company. It's with the people. And if you can actually pull that knowledge out, which is actually been really hard to do without pre-AI, that's super powerful. So I would say the one thing that will make a big difference is managing or keeping your stock library, your own, and make sure you control it, you own it, it's your footage.
Nadia, did that help? Great. Here we go. Oh, well, I mean, I've got the list, but we could carry on forever. We'll carry this offline, Caroline, over a glass of wine sometime.
Oh,
So
definitely.
yes. But thank you so much. That's been absolutely fantastic. And I think, my big takeaway now is actually investing in, an upfront solid piece of authentic human created content that then you can use AI to scale out across all your other channels. But you're starting from, I guess a human source of truth that, is going to resonate with your audience.
And keep all of the stuff that went into that 60 seconds, but it's the tip of the iceberg in terms of briefs and footage and all of that. So keep the whole lot.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
And
guys.
we'll be distributing this on our YouTube channel and AI Marketers Guild channel. So, yeah, and feel free to reach out to Caroline on LinkedIn. I know, thanks, Doug. It's even East Coast where Doug is. So I get to bed.
Very impressive.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.